I stood near my crying mom, trying to understand what was happening, but it seems she didn't see me. My classmates crowded around, dressed in mourning suits. Funeral wreaths were hanged everywhere. Suddenly, our neighbor Rob entered. He approached my parents and gave them a framed photo with a black band. I took a closer look and recognized myself. Is it a joke? Are you burying me? But I'm alive. I stroked the photo with all my strength, but it didn't move a bit. Then it dawned onto me I was a ghost. Rob was telling something to Mom. Wait, now I recall. It was him who finished me off. The day before, Rob invited me to film TikToks together with live music. Sure, I agreed. He was a guitarist and I wanted fame. We went out to the backyard and I suddenly felt dizzy. I complained to Rob, but he only advised to switch it off. No head, no trouble. Then I was learning the dance and Rob stood behind me, and at one moment he cried and I felt acute pain in the back of my head. Then I came to my senses and found myself here at my own funeral. The guests were discussing the accident under their breath. What accident? I was murdered. Rob killed me and he will pay for it. I was furious and attacked him with my fists, but only went through his body. I couldn't do anything. Game over. And then I suddenly saw my classmate Hannah. She called herself a medium able to contact ghosts. But everyone else just thought she was crazy and nobody ever wanted to be friends with her. Do you see me? She rushed to the doors, but I stood right in front of her. Stop! I won't talk to you, Hannah whispered. Ghosts aren't supposed to have hearts, but mine sank, and I felt breathless. I whispered, help me, please. It wasn't an accident. The murderer is here. Hannah watched me silently for a while, then nodded and left. Soon, we were at her place. So, what's the plan? Hannah asked rather skeptically. What do you mean? You go tell the police that Rob attacked me and smashed my head. Hannah tapped her temple. Who would believe she'd talked to a deceased person? Wrenching pain throbbed in my soul. True, nobody would believe that. So what? What next? Hannah brought me back to reality, offering to post the real story at my Facebook page. Great idea! In a couple of minutes, my accusation letter about Rob appeared on the web. Now waiting. Likes, reposts, comments, and watches rocketed, and in several hours we had an incredible coverage. Many users were attacking Rob's page with angry messages, and he had to delete his account. Now you are up to the neck in shit and you won't escape. The following events unfolded fast. Journalists never let Rob go, and he had to agree to an interview. The sheriff also took part. He confirmed there was no evidence against Rob, and it was all an accident. Seemed like a dead end. What next? Hannah said I needed to recall details of my last hours on Earth. But that was a problem. I remembered only the pain in the head and that I'd bent over to tie my shoelaces. Then scream and silence. Hannah offered to go into a trance together to find out what happened before the scream. What trance? I'm a ghost! Hannah took my hand. Breathing funny, she mumbled something, but then had to admit our bond was weak and wasn't going to work. We needed to find another way, but how? Let's increase the pressing, Hannah offered. Let's turn his life into hell. Then he'll break and surrender to the cops himself. In a minute, a post appeared on my Facebook page. The police is feeble. My soul cannot rest. Revenge me. The hate plan worked. At first, Rob was kicked out of the band he played in. Then the shops stopped serving him, and his mail was full of angry letters. I watched him every day, and once he called a man in suit who turned out to be a realtor. What? You want to run from this city? Hell no. I flew to Hannah immediately. We needed a new post to keep our plan working. Luckily, I'd got 1 million subscribers by that time, and the message would go viral. In a minute, we published the call to the murderer's house, and soon comments burst with pictures of the crowd. We rushed there. The crowd around the house was furious, shouting, "Punish the criminal!" I flew inside through a wall and saw Rob. He was sitting on the floor, rocking from side to side, covering his ears. Suddenly he cried to the crowd he'd go to the police and tell them everything. Yes, we won! I flew outside to Hannah to tell her the news, but saw people started breaking windows and throwing burning letters inside. Hannah watched that in shock, repeating we'd gone too far. She tried to calm the crowd, but it was all in vain. Suddenly the curtains caught fire and the entire building was burning in an instant. Then Hannah flung the door open and ran to Rob. "Stop! You'll die! Stop!" I rushed after her but couldn't see a thing in the smoke. Suddenly I heard coughing. I saw Hannah by the stairs and tried to grab her hand when suddenly there was a bright flash and I saw myself as in a movie. I'd bent over to tie the shoelaces and felt dizzy. I staggered and fell over, hitting my head on a stone. Rob called me, but I couldn't answer, gulped by darkness. I withdrew my hand and stared at Hannah in horror. That was a trance. So Rob didn't hit me on the head. I fell myself. It turned out I could become a murderer now, and he wasn't guilty. I rushed to save Rob. He was still sitting out of breath. I kneeled before him and desperately begged him to hear me, when he suddenly called my name. "Yes, it's me. You see me, dear. Now let's get out of here." But he only cried and asked to forgive him and fainted. Then Hannah burst into the room, covering her nose with a sleeve. She grabbed Rob by the hands and dragged to the exit, and as soon as they got outside, the roof collapsed. In the hospital, Rob asked for a cop and told everything as it was. Later, he got a 3-year probation for not calling the ambulance and running away. I asked Hannah to send him my thanks and forgiveness, and right after that, I felt incredibly light. I was ascending higher and higher. What a delight! Now I'm free. Thank you. Like the video? Subscribe and give us a like. Support the channel. Thank you.
I'm a psychic. My gift is to heal with my hands. But this time, the client was special, Bill White. He wanted to get rid of the memories that tormented him terribly. I touched him, but suddenly, everything went dark. At that moment, a strange vision came to me. Someone is approaching my mom. She runs to the stairs, wants to go down. And then I saw that my mom was lying on the steps unconscious. And up there was Bill White, my client. The vision ended in a bright flash, and I went blind. Panicked, I called out to him, but all I heard was the door slam. He ran away. I was terrified. It was pitch black, and I couldn't even make out the outlines of objects. And the last thing I saw was my mom's murder. What happened? Everyone in town knew I could heal, but I've never had a vision. I just helped people get rid of their pain. And that's all. Although my own pain hasn't gone away for years, it was different. For as long as I can remember, I have been tormented by the question, who is responsible for the death of my mom? It happened when I was 6. I only vaguely remembered crying over my mom's body, and then the policeman took me to the orphanage. After a few years of living in the orphanage, I realized I had a gift. At first, I healed children in the orphanage, and after graduation, I was given an apartment. There I received patients. Those who were recovering told each other about it, and people began to come to me from all over the city. Apparently, Bill White came to me the same way, and it seems that in our session, I discovered the ability to see the past. Perhaps Bill knew something about my mom's murder. I was trying to figure out how to find him. All I remembered about him was a mole above his upper lip, just like mine. Then I thought of Matt, the cop I helped with a terrible migraine. I should call him. but it was difficult to move by touch. I was constantly dropping something or hitting the corners of the furniture. There was darkness everywhere. Finally, I found my phone by touch and went to contacts from memory. I started calling everyone and finally heard Matt's voice on the phone. It worked. I told him about the strange client and my vision on my mom's death. But Matt said that he was suspended from the service and no longer engaged in investigations. At that moment, all my hopes were dashed. I had no one else to turn to. An hour passed, 2 hours, and all of a sudden, Matt called me back. He said that he had thought it over and was ready to help. And he had his reasons. Matt said that when he was working as a detective, his wife was killed. He tried to find the culprit himself, collected evidence, and found the address of the person. But in the end, he didn't have time to arrest him. The killer committed suicide. After that, Matt couldn't do business like he used to, and he retired. Every killer must be punished. Matt finished. An hour later, he was at my house. Matt asked for my laptop to hack into the police database. After a long search, we found the street where Bill White lived. Matt was trying to get the house number. But suddenly, the system blocked us. Heck, at least we had a lead. In the evening, we reached the outskirts of the city. We had to look for White here. We went to all the houses on the street. No one heard of Bill. We were already going back. Then Matt noticed the house with boarded up windows. We got closer and went up to the porch. And suddenly, I felt dizzy. I grabbed a railing and the vision came to me again. Fake images appeared and I realized that Bill White was definitely here. We had to get inside the house. Matt kept saying that there was a patrol running around the area and if we got caught, we'd be arrested for breaking and entering. But I said that I would go alone or with him. I would get into this house. Matt sighed heavily and agreed. With a terrible crash, he broke off a couple of boards at the entrance to the house. I froze. Did someone hear us? We quickly went inside. I asked Matt to stay close while I read White's energy. I felt the walls and the remaining furniture in the rooms and hoped that another vision would come to me. Suddenly, Matt stopped. He said that there was a photo on the wall. There's a man with a girl. She looks like you. Matt chuckled. He took the picture down from the wall. And I picked it up. Another flash. A vision. Someone gives me a toy and then I heard a car drive up to the house with the siren on. Let's go, Matt whispered to me. And a second later, there was a terrible crash as the cops broke into the house. I hesitated, but Matt grabbed my arm. And we ran as fast as we could. I heard the cop chasing us, but at the last moment, Matt pushed him away and we ran out of the house. I was exhausted, but Matt said we couldn't stop. Only when we were far enough away did he call a taxi. All the way, I clutched that picture in my hands, but the vision didn't appear. I asked Matt to describe the man in the photo. White cheekbones, a mole near the lips, Matt said. It was Bill White. I remembered that he had the same mole as me. I asked Matt to take the photo to the station and find out something about White. Who was this girl? Maybe she would give us another clue. Matt said he wasn't welcome at the police station, but he tried to do something. Matt didn't answer his phone the next day, and it wasn't until late afternoon that he called. It turned out that he was detained, and he was in the police station. He was turned in by the same cop who ran after us. Matt said he would only be released on bail. Hell, I was the one who put him where he used to put criminals. I had to help him. I groped my way to the locker where I kept my savings and took out all the money. I hoped that would be enough. With difficulty, I got out of the house and went to the sound of cars on the highway. I had never hitched a ride blindly before. Finally, some guy took pity and agreed to give me a ride. When Matt was released, I told him I couldn't ask for his help anymore. If he got caught again, he could be sent to prison. But Matt said that we would see this through. Together, he swore on his police honor that he would not back down. Oh, Matt. He also said that while he was in the police station, he found out something. The man in the photo was really Bill White. Matt hesitated a little. He sighed heavily and said that Bill was my father. No way. So the girl in the photo with him was me? Resentment seethed inside me. How could he leave me? I was beginning to think that White had something to do with my mom's death. Why else would he run away after she was killed? The next morning, we drove to one of the poor neighborhoods where White might be. Matt talked to the beggars, but no one knew anything. We were about to leave. But then a ragamuffin said he knew White. For a couple of dollars, he told us that this strange White recently lived in an abandoned building. And then I felt he was right. White was very close. I followed my gut. Matt and I went down to the basement of a house, and the feeling grew stronger. White was here. I called his name and immediately heard quick footsteps. White decided to run away again. Police! Freeze! Matt shouted and ran after Bill. Matt quickly caught up with him. I heard him push Bill to the floor and then the handcuffs clicked. Bill was breathing heavily and no longer struggling. Then Matt began the interrogation. White admitted that all his life he was tormented by a conscience for what he did to his wife. He hoped that the psychic would help him get rid of the heartache, but I felt bad, and he was afraid. We were fighting. I pushed my wife and she fell down the stairs. White said painfully, "I still hate myself for running away. For leaving my daughter. I tried to find her, but without success. I'd like to know how is she now." White finished. I was shaking and couldn't speak. But in the end, I decided, "Bill, I'm the girl you left behind. I'm your daughter." There was a tense silence. A moment later, Bill burst into tears and begged for forgiveness. Tears began to run down my cheeks too, and I realized that I bared no grudge against Bill. And suddenly, I've got my sight back. Unbelievable! Seeing the world again was a miracle. And I realized that as soon as I forgave my father, my illness went away. It's like I've been given a second chance to make things right. I didn't know what to do next. Matt was waiting for me to call the cops because my dad had actually killed my mom. But I wasn't in a hurry to get my phone out. All my life I've wanted to punish a murderer, but do I want it now?